Okay. Uh, okay, so let's watch the time. Let's try to not go past 9:12. Like, oh yeah, 9 o'clock.
Past 12, dude. It's like 4.5 hours.
I'm saying the long hand
Yeah.
to
Okay.
12. My lion dance brain is like not functioning.
Let's not go past 12. All right. Hour number 5.
Welcome back to the Inspired Scholar podcast. I am Charles.
And I'm Martin.
And today's topic, we are talking about, is post-secondary education worth it today? What do you think?
By instinct, I would say I would actually maybe answer a question with a question, which is a very poor technique, but done by so many quasi intellectuals nowadays. Was post secondary education ever necessary?
Interesting. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I mean, okay, so I think we can get into that question more precisely in a minute. But the reason to kind of like follow up on my question, was it ever necessary? Um, from my experience, right, some of the most intelligent people I've ever met, some of the most people with the most knowledge, rather, have been have never gone to university or college, right? Self-taught through either experience or whatever the reason is, and whether it was financial, whether it was a cultural. When I say cultural, I mean I think a lot of people also don't realize that this whole treadmill of high school grade school thing, that's pretty much a Western world thing as well, right? In Asia, in Asia as well, right? But outside, that hasn't really been that much. Maybe okay, Eastern Europe kind of thing. So yes, most of the world has been following that treadmill, but there are a lot of places out there where that kind of wasn't necessarily the idea, right? That said, also even in the places with the treadmill, there's many people who follow different directions, particularly let's say technical, right, or construction or things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where post secondary education isn't necessarily something that you require, or might actually be a detriment in a lot of ways, right? Um, so I think this is it wasn't like, even if you look at the statistics of um, uh, how many people went to university in the 60s, like in the West, let's say in Canada, America, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, right? Yes, the numbers has increased, but it hasn't necessarily been 100%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the question is it necessary? Back to the original question, right? And I think maybe um, 20, 30 years ago, you could probably make an argument that it is necessary for a certain type of life, right? And I think maybe that's where the mistake, or not, rather not mistake. I think that's where we are kind of now at a crossroads, where um, the university education or college education no longer guarantees that certain type of life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like again, in the 50s, many middle managers in most corporations didn't have a university education,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that became more kind of necessary. So it's almost like a going up, a graph going up and then going down, where now I feel like we're in an age where particularly with AI and all these other things, where I think people are starting to wake up and say like, well, do I really need this 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
or 3 years of whatever
Yeah.
doing this kind of stuff, when the I don't know, the programming degree I get essentially is only going to be worth for the next 10 years, and once I'm replaced, then what do I do, right? So I think more people are asking this question now because of we're at the cusp of a societal change. But I do think this was a question that I think that a lot of people um, probably should have been asking all throughout,
Yeah.
right? And maybe we can break it down to like, why did people do it? Like, what when you were in a treadmill, when we were in a treadmill, like, everybody, And I will say, even when I was in high school, we certainly had teachers that who actually, and that wasn't that long ago. The treadmill was still established, but we still had teachers who were quite smart and said, not everybody has to go to university. Not everybody's made for
Hmm.
university or
Yes.
college or whatever,
Yes.
right? It doesn't necessarily mean that like you should be following these things. There's lots of people out there who have great lives who never go to university
Hmm.
and kind of thing, and quite successful in this stuff, right? So um, that was always kind of told us, even in the 90s, when we graduated high school, they were telling us like, okay, well, yeah, you're not really you shouldn't set your mind on this just because that's the way to do things, because maybe you're not that kind of person, so to speak, right? So
Yeah.
that was kind of that I thought was very intelligent at the time, right?
Mm. Well, yeah, I see what you're saying. Definitely, I believe that we have went through a period of time. If you go back and look at history, we went through, the industrial revolution, right? And
Hmm.
basically the assembly lines, and people were working in factories. This is pre after post World War II
Hmm.
kind of thing, and that seemed to be the technology that was driving the economy at the time. Because yeah, if you could mass produce whatever it is that people want, then yeah, great. You can totally make a business out of it, right? And so that kind of drove people away from agricultural, farmland and
Right,
everything, right?
right.
But then, okay, so now we've moved into an industrial age, and then us growing up in the 80s and
Hmm.
90s, that's more the digital age, right? Because
Right.
that's where
That's when it
people,
started.
yeah, that's when it started. And people started to be like, hey, computers are the next best thing, and it's going to solve all our problems, and everybody should be working in the office. And I just remember that growing up, it it was like, if you didn't strive for an office job, then basically, all other jobs were like meaningless, or beneath lower class,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So, don't go out and be a contractor, construction worker. Don't be a plumber. Don't be an electrician, right? Aim to be a computer programmer. Get an accounting degree. Doctor, like all of these white collar jobs,
Hmm.
right? And I think the the push for white collar careers has been so far skewed that you know that a lot of people who would have been better suited for, say, being in more hands-on type work, industrial work, where whether if it's plumbing, construction, or whatever, uh, those people were kind of, I don't know, sold or brainwashed into thinking that that the office job would be better and give them a better life and whatnot. But
Yeah,
reality is that it depends on the person, right?
so there's two things. I think one of the things, there's a cultural thing here, and not just a culture of like Asians, that Asians always push for this kind of stuff. The parent wants there to be a doctor, a lawyer,
Yeah.
not a not a plumber kind of thing, right? But also like even immigrants would be pretty much,
Hmm.
I look at that immigrants the same. I think a lot of that stems from not just the um, uh, uh, cultural thing, but also from the experience of our parents, right? Because our parents, when they came here, didn't have those lawyer jobs and whatever kind of thing. They had the physical jobs, and the reality of it is that, I mean, even today, like if you say to me which ones would I recommend our students' parents, I always make a case for the trades, right? For them, just because, particularly at the cusp right now, I feel I generally try to tell parents, if you think you want your kid to be a lawyer, um, that's bad. We have too many lawyers, and most of them are quite stupid anyway. So, and in the next 20 years, there's going to be a lawyer called AI that'll be 100 times more efficient than whatever you think your son or daughter can do. So that's kind of not a job with no future. Whereas being a plumber, we're still not at a point where when a robot can come change your plumbing, and that's not going to be for a while anyway. So, it has a bit of a longer future. But the point I'm getting at is that job, that physical job, is a very is very it's more difficult in a lot of ways, right? I mean, um, more difficult on the surface, let's put it that way, because by no means, if you're a corporate lawyer and the amount of stress and all these kind of things, like these are difficult difficulties, but they're the difficulties that our parents saw because our parents went through them, right? Like there's a very it's a very different type of difficulty working on your knees when you're 50 years old versus sitting in a boardroom when you're 50 years old, right?
True.
So, and I think, our parents didn't want us to be sitting there and like kind of, backbreaking job when you're 50 because they knew that you're only physically so healthy for so many years, right? From their perception, it's a lot easier to sit behind a desk when you're 50 making decisions, right? Um, so I think a lot of that happens from the previous generation having suffered through the difficulties and kind of thinking I don't want my kid to be to be going through that. So that was the general push, right? I think the other side of it is I mean, also related to that is just a of what lack of understanding of the jobs themselves, right? Like, you got all these parents who are saying, I want my kid to be a lawyer, but they don't really know what a lawyer is, right? They don't even know the average. When I talk to one of our parents, I talk to like I don't know one of our Chinese parents about the image they have in their mind is some television version of it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
they don't understand that there's actually so many lawyers in Canada or America right now that actually the average salary of a lawyer isn't really that good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's a saturated market, right?
Yeah.
So you have like you can go to this lawyer to that lawyer. Like there's very they see the lawyer on television who makes $5 million because he's a corporate lawyer. Well, that's like it's the same thing as with the basketball players or the boxers or whatever, right? The one guy who makes it becomes the star, and everybody wants to do that. But then they
Yeah.
don't see the 500,000 guys who basically waste away, never make it there, and they never kind of thing.
Yeah.
Every I think every um, uh, 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 profession has that, right?
Yes. Yes.
And like yes, maybe again 50 years ago when lawyer when there was less of everything, being a lawyer meant a semi decent salary. But today, when 500 lawyers are graduating every week, this thing right? It's like okay, I go to okay, you're a moron, okay, I'm going to go with you,
Yeah.
right? And even the person I choose might still be making pittance. Why? Because I can go to another lawyer, right? I can ask Chat GPT. I could, so there's all these alternatives nowadays, which obviously reduce the salary, reduce kind of thing. So I think parents still haven't changed their mind. They're still looking at it. But even back then, they didn't really actually understand what it was. Like for them, it
Yeah.
was just a cushy, quote unquote, cushy job where it was easier, and they knew that their son wasn't going to be on his hands and knees or
Right.
up on some ladder,
Mhm.
when they're 30, 40 years old and this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And they thought, okay, that must be an easier job, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, lesson is follow your passions and follow your dreams. And
No, that's not the lesson. Then it's just like
go
no,
join a circus.
yeah, I'm vehemently aware and I have this um aversion to when people say follow your passions because I think I honestly feel that is such a I hate this word privilege, but it's a privileged it's words, it's advice from a person who is by my definition of the word retard, and I define the word retard as willfully stupid, right? Because it's not you're not really like everything is a balance. Okay, so I will agree that when people say if you keep changing chasing your passion is going to happen, but a lot of I mean, again when you see that in the movies and all this kind of stuff, all this that's all the Cinderella story, right?
Yes.
Reality of things is okay if you want to be a singer, you got to be pretty good. Okay, that's the first thing,
Yeah.
right? So that's the other thing. Like if you're chasing your passions and you suck, and people telling you suck, you kind of have to be a little bit more, cognizant of that. Like, okay, maybe I can make a living with this. But even if you are good, there's also a variety of connections and things required, and
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
having a business sense and all this kind of stuff. Like one of the things, what is it, America's Got Talent, it shows you how many talented people and singers and all these kind of, they're like millions of these people, and they're nowhere. Why? Because their cousin isn't, an owner of the whatever, or
Yeah,
they
yeah.
don't.
They're not connected. They're not
Right.
connected.
So reality of it is like it's not so simple as just following your passion, right? And I think the reason why I hate that advice is because it doesn't look at life realistically,
Mhm.
right? I've always found that advice is usually okay to give, like upper middle class kind of thing, where in reality is like, okay, you chase your passions and you suck. Well, your dad and mommy have enough money still that you'll still be able to do things. Okay, you're not gonna die of starvation, right?
Mm.
But if you're a new immigrant and you come to Canada, America, and your family's like, they're struggling and they're working their butts off, and then you want to be a writer, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do nothing but write. Um, you know, that's probably stupid advice, because the chances of you becoming a successful writer are not very good, right? So I think that advice has always, like, again, it's a balance thing, and I've always, to me, how do you balance that out? Well, the reality of it is like maybe you are really good, um, and there's many examples in history of really good writers, specifically in the 50s, let's say in the 40s, or in the 30s, people who had day jobs and then came home and did the writing. So
Mhm.
there are
Yeah.
certain things. And with technology nowadays, you want to be a singer, go do your work, get paid, make sure your wife and kids are like fed, and then go do a video at night and do a thing and put it on YouTube. And you know
Mhm.
what? If you're good, you have a better
Yeah.
chance now of becoming than you 20, 30 years ago, right?
Yes.
So I feel like you can really do both. And if you really truly are, people say that, well, if you don't follow your passion, is not. No, I don't think that's true, right? I think you have, yes, you have to practice it.
Mhm.
Yes, there are certain things that you need to maybe put in more effort into it, kind of thing. But again, if you're a singer and then your career's time hitting off, then maybe you make that change. Maybe you say, okay, I'm not going to be a plumber anymore. I'm going to start singing and doing that for for good. But I do always think that teachers should always give the practical advice. It's like, go get a job, go get a skill set that allows you to have a job. And that goes back to our, is the university education necessary now? But the answer right now, from like, as I said before, was it ever necessary? And now I think the answer is quite simply no, it's not. And I think the reason why it has become this way is because university has become too much of that flowery stuff and too much removed from real life.
Mhm.
Just by look at the subjects offered,
Yeah.
right? I remember I have a high school friend, and I can remember where I found this out. Maybe somebody told me that, oh, he's getting a PhD in some graphics design. I was like, PhD in graphics? What is a PhD in graphics? That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. PhD is supposed to be something you do, like, and again, like 99% of PhDs today are garbage. PhDs used to be something like to get a PhD, you had to do research. You had to come up with something, right? You went to your advisor, you talked about it, you planned thing, you did the research, you presented. That's, so you got this doctor name because you actually found something. That's why not most PhDs of value used to be in science, math, maybe in business and this kind of thing. Okay, that's kind of stretching it, right? But now we're starting to give I have a doctorship of picking my nose. Like, it get ridiculous, right? And it waters things down.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I think uh, what you're. I get what you're trying to say is really there are some PhDs in some really far fetched uh,
Disciplines.
disciplines that are like so way off that you know it's just so way off in a corner where it doesn't really affect a lot of people, right?
Yeah, the
So
value
the
of it
value
to
of it, yeah,
society is
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 very
minimal.
minimal. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
So no, I totally agree. Like definitely, there's some weird stuff going on in university these days.
And they
Uh,
still charge the same
you
money.
know,
They still,
yeah.
like, it's still, you got. I mean, in Canada, probably a bit less than the States, but you got all these stories of like people coming. I'm coming out of a $200,000 debt in gender theory. It's like, what the? like, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, maybe that's your passion. Maybe you're trying to change the world. Are you going to build a building with that? No. Well, then how useful is it?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, like, and the other thing is some of these things used to be covered anyways, because if you get like, for example, language acquisition or language, you get a PhD in that, you could talk about gender theory, so these subjects could be covered by other subjects or things. But again, the university have extrapolated all these things because either under the, I don't know, chicken or the egg, whether the university is responsible for it or the universities were replying to the need, probably a bit of both. But it's like they're coming up with these things where and students are, sometimes because they believe it, sometimes they do it because it's easy.
Yeah.
Right.
I just think that with the price also, if we talk about the pricing wise, aside from the subject matter, right, you know yeah, people are going way into debt for these, you know majors, these degrees, masters in whatever odd subjects.
Mm.
And yeah, and in the end they come out and they work a regular office job where they could have just gone to college, right, and,
Well,
and not graduate with a huge amount of debt,
we'll go back to the
right.
useful ones as well.
Yeah.
You can even get you can get a master's degree in business and you can still come out work for Starbucks.
Yeah.
Because here's the other thing, like, I mean, so I came with a bachelor's in business, right? And I got a job in 2 days after I graduated. And why? Because the school I went to, wasn't seen as like the, one of the best schools, but in the business world, everybody knew that if you came out of that school, you knew your shit. So boom, you got hired. But like after, a while and stuff like that, and then I went to Korea and whatnot, and then I came back from Korea, and everybody was like, "Well, where's your Canadian experience?" Right? So there was like, it was as if I went back 15 feet, this
Yeah.
kind of thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and nobody wanted to give me that chance, right? So like, you even if you do the right degree, sometimes you're still, you still take a path or this and that, and you're still.
It may still not work out
Exactly.
smoothly,
Exactly.
right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, in the end, I mean, I find that for me, actually, like, what really changed the trajectory of my life was working at ACL, Atomic Energy Canada. And how did that happen? That didn't happen because I had a business degree. Although, yes, it contributed. I mean, if I didn't, I probably wouldn't have been able to, get the interview. But largely, I mean, my manager, whoever told me, that happened because he looked at my name. He says, "Wait a minute. This guy was a sports director of the Chinese Students Association. What the right?" And he called me in because he was Chinese. Like, that's
Mhm.
really weird, right? And he called me in. I was competing against guys from Harvard. He didn't. He called me in as a joke, and then I knocked the interview out of a park, right? And then they liked me, and this and that. And I had like 6 interviews, or I think 5 interviews, and then I got the job, and that really changed my life because it was such a high level job. But you know, that had very little to do with what I studied, really,
Mhm.
right? And I think that is what we need to kind of impart on a lot of young people is that, like, your university education, it shouldn't be the thing that you look at getting you the job. It should be the thing that gives you the skills
Mhm.
to be able
To
to
perform the job.
perform the job, or get, not just perform, like, to be able to land the job, right? And I think this is where, like, a lot of the disconnect is that because it's been such a over the time, it's like that treadmill has always been so, like, high school, grade school, high school, university, job, right? And people have kind of like, oh well, if you don't go to university, you can't get a job, kind of thing. And it's just like, well, what about the people who go to college? Well, they maybe get a worse job, kind of stuff. There are tons of people who in fairly, high positions, again, for previous generations, who have very high level positions in different corporations, who only went to college or
Yeah.
never even, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like they were less intelligent, but again, I feel like the education they still got gave them the right skill sets,
Mhm.
right? And I think this, like, for universities, and I guess this is why we have a school, because this has kind of, um, infected even all the way down to grade schools, where the skills that you kind of are supposed to pick up through this education are no longer there,
Yeah.
right? So, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not really relevant. Like, you know what? Maybe even gender theory would be useful if it was taught with a certain rigor,
Mhm.
and it was taught with a certain, let's say, like science, where you had experimentation and proof and all this kind of things,
Mhm.
right? So I would agree. I would even see probably those people studying that would probably even come out a different kind of people themselves,
Mhm.
right? If the but like you can even have, I guess you can even have a willy nilly topic, but if it's taught in a way where it where the rules and regulations kind of structure the person, that person can still do very different things,
Yeah.
right? Because ultimately, like, our backgrounds, we don't have teaching backgrounds, and yet we teach. And again, this is probably egotistical, and you'll have to ask maybe some of our parents, whatever. But I've got more compliments on being a better teacher than most of the like the parents always tell me, like, oh, you're a better teacher than the teachers that my kid has in school. Even the kids themselves are like, oh, I learned more from you than I have from my English teacher in the last 3 months. It's like, well, how does that even make sense? This is a person who was educated in teaching, and I blow them out of the water,
Yeah.
right? And again, why? Because I was taught in a very traditional way, right? So everything I approach, I use those fundamental skill sets. Those the fundamentals are drilled into me that I can apply them to various topics,
Mhm.
right? And I
Yes.
think this is probably like, so. Yes, the typical answer is the which we kind of mentioned, the wafy topics, the wafy majors are not obviously helpful. But I think the issue is deeper than that. I think it's also the way they're taught, right?
Mhm.
You know, this is why you get students who graduate from university math programs, and they can't do math, even the right topics, and they still can't do the top because again, the rigor is no longer there,
Mhm.
right? And that's just kind of perfect through our society where you have there's that one day we'll have a topic about the yeah, it was we mentioned it previously before, is like how parents, parenting, right? How parents have kind of allowed the gentle parenting idea and all this kind of stuff, right? Where now you're producing children that can't handle hardship. So if you're producing children can't handle hardship, you cannot have a school that is basically hardship,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
you know so I think, to go back, is it necessary? I was never really convinced that it was. I think if a school can impart on you a bit of a entrepreneurship, a little bit of that spirit, then you don't go to university. You go, like, I was in high school. One of my wrestling coaches was one of the few people who didn't go to university from our high school, because like 99% of the people went to university in our high school. He didn't. He was a he was a cop, right?
Yeah.
And he came back, and we were like, "Oh, why you would some makes you will become a cop?" It's like, "Yeah, that's what I want to do." But he
Yeah.
was a cop, and then he became a sergeant, and then he started his own business, and as far as I know, the guy got quite wealthy,
Yeah.
right?
I you know, again, go recap from my perspective is, is education worth it today? It is worth it if you really enjoy it and if you have a passion for it, right? Like, again, so many of us, oh, okay, yeah, I honestly believe that, throughout the 80s and 90s, like, many of us were constantly pushed to, want to believe in the office job, and we're constantly
There's that
being
treadmill.
being being moved in that direction,
Mhm.
and many of us, ended up graduating and realizing, hey, after getting into that job, it was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah,
And
there's
then
that
and
too.
then and then it was a waste of money, right? My message to everybody would be, just be true to yourself, be honest with yourself in terms of what do you really truly want to do. Don't let other people influence, your mind frame. Like, obviously take their opinions, yes, but don't go with the flow, and don't go with, don't let other people override, in the end, really what you believe in and what you want to do, right? Yes, if you want to be a dentist or a doctor, absolutely go for it, pay for it, right? Because yeah, you will have and I would even encourage people, if you have any type of passion for any type of work, go in and volunteer and see what it's really like.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there because I think that's the key of it. Because the one issue I'm saying, if you have a passion, and the passions change. So
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
problem. So you and again, a 14-year-old who wants to be a doctor has no idea what a doctor really is.
exactly.
So their idea of a doctor may be from their parents or this kind of stuff, and they work to be a doctor, they become a doctor. And I've seen this. Nothing annoyed me more when I was working at ACL than all these engineers who wanted to do marketing, and I was always like, okay, you should have studied marketing then. All right, you're an engineer, go do engineering. All right, that's your strength, this is my strength, go away. Right. And it was you know this realization, especially with the young guys, where it's like, oh, it was boring, I don't want to sit there. It's like, what did you think it was?
Yeah.
Right. But again, it's because the image that is sold to this person doesn't necessarily match the reality. So I think this is
Right.
where this
Yeah.
is where volunteer, find out,
Go. Yeah.
look at these things for what they are, and whether they actually, whether, like, not just like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. Okay, do you think you can sit there in an office with looking at legal documents for hours on end? Like, put that
Yeah.
in front of yourself, try it for a little bit, and if you can't, maybe that's not really the
Go
job for
in,
you.
shadow somebody in that role,
Correct.
right? See
Correct.
what they do day in and day out,
Correct.
and that'll give you the actual, realistic image of exactly what that
Which is again why,
job
like,
is.
the vision, and what, like, for example, for Inspired Scholar, why I prefer professionals as teachers than teachers, is because I want the student to experience, like, talk to a professional and kind of find out some things, even if it's like, whether it's mathematics or science kind of thing, but also kind of learn from the professional side, learn kind of thing. And it gives you more interaction with actual people who are out there, right? I think one of the biggest reasons why we have this problem, why especially higher education is no longer effective or necessary, is because too many of these professors, they're just locked in their own world,
Yeah.
right? They're locked in that educational world and they really don't know what's going outside, right?
Mhm.
And then you get these people who are teaching kids about these things, and these things don't apply necessarily, right? So there goes back to, if we are able to provide that experience, and if you're able to talk to a lawyer and he'll say to you like, oh, you know what, 99% of my job was incredibly boring. And if you're a young guy and you hear that, and you'd be like, what? Why? And then you go and do the shouting, this
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
and all this kind of,
Figure it out.
exactly. And if you're still good with it, go for it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But now you're hopefully walking with open eyes.
yeah, yeah.
You're not walking in with like,
The
the
movie image of,
yeah, the
what the
ideal.
courtroom, what the courtroom is going to be like.
Right.
Yeah,
And then you live through it and you just actually find out this isn't what I wanted,
yeah,
and I want to go somewhere else, kind of thing. And at the end of the day, I think what we want is, we want students to be strong enough that, like, if that's the case, you can always switch.
yeah.
There's
Switch.
no, like, this is the thing. This is the one thing I think our society, or our not society, like, the previous age society has done wrong, is that this is it and only it, and if nothing else happens, it's over. No, you can have 5 different careers. Like,
Hmm.
some of the greatest people, if you read some history of some of the most interesting people, whether they're writers or things, you'll be like, oh, he was a mechanic, he was a babysitter, he invented 5 like, it's just, like,
They
how do
did
you,
so many things.
right? Yeah. I mean, what is it? Richard Kroc, the McDonald's owner. He
Ray
started
Kroc, Ray
McDonald.
Kroc.
Ray Kroc, yeah, started McDonald's at like 56 or 62, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
Right? He was like a salesman, and this and then,
Traveling salesman.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, you can have these things are possible for anybody and everybody, right? You don't have to be tied to this thing. You just have to be brave enough, and you have to have a strong work ethic. Nothing
Hmm.
comes easy, right?
Yeah,
But at the same time, you have to learn to be honest with yourself, and you
yeah.
have to kind of look at it and be like, yeah, do the shadowing, do all these kind of things. Is this what you really like? And let's not forget, is this what you really like? But maybe you suck at it, right? Because the last thing I want to bring to this thing is, like, you're falling on more of the side of, like, do what you feel is going to be matching you, and I agree with that. But again, to me, everything, it's a balance. You have to be good at this, but you also be to the fact that you still need to feed yourself,
Yeah.
right? So, like, if you are going to be, I am going to be a painter no matter what, okay? And you're, and maybe you suck, maybe you're good, but you're, like, living in a roach infested apartment. Don't blame society for that. That
Yeah.
is your choice,
Yeah.
because you decided to do this, and have an understanding that if you do choose to do that and it's hard and you still choose it, it'll probably make it easier on yourself because that'll be still your choice. You'll be
Yes.
like, it's my choice. I know I live in a shithole, but you know what? I am happy internally and all this kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you'll be probably much better off, right?
Mhm.
But if you're expecting, the movie version of like you're gonna paint something, and the next thing you know, you're gonna be painting the Sistine Chapel, because that ain't gonna happen, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So like be real with yourself and be understanding that like if there are some these things that you are very favorable in or very good at or just in love with, and you don't have connections in the industry, you don't know anybody, anything, like you're gonna need something to fall back on. There are certain things I think that they're transcendental. Doesn't matter age or this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think schools used to know this,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they no longer do. And that's why to sum up, I think as I said, even at our day and age, I've questioned whether it was necessary, right? I certainly went through the treadmill, right? But I will say I had a different parenting. Like my dad, when I was a kid, when I was in high school, he took me on trips a couple of times with trucking trips, and they were difficult. I hated it, right? And he just put it to me like this. He said, "Do whatever the hell you want. Study, don't study. Go out with girls, don't go out with girls. Do whatever the you want, right? When you finish school, when you finish high school, you're either gonna go to university or you're gonna become a trucker with me, because I don't have a big huge business to hire in.
Yeah.
I have my own trucking business, just me. So you're gonna be trucker number two, and you're gonna drive a truck because I'm gonna be charging you rent, and you're gonna have to start paying me money.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. That's life. All right. And so I was just like, I don't want to be a trucker because it's too hard. So I stuck in my balls off to make sure that I
You
don't.
did
Right.
do that. Yes.
Right. But he never said to me, I need to do it. He just said, do whatever. He just said, son, you need to be able to support yourself because I won't be able to do that my whole life. Right.
Right.
And I think that is the message. First of all, that's the message that parents should give their kids. Okay. Right away. I find parents who coddle, and again, these are all episodes coming up, but I find parents who coddle their kids disgusting because you're hurting your kids. Right. Life isn't easy. Life is hard. The objective of a teacher or a parent should be to make that student stronger, right? But education institutions should also have that in mind. Teachers should look at their students as like, you're going to have it harder than me, so I need to make you better.
So final answer: is education worth it? It is worth it, so long as you are true to yourself and you're following what you want to do and you understand what it is and have an accurate understanding of what you'll get on the other side.
So I would say basic education is worth it. That's where I'm coming from, meaning like grade school thing. And university, I think no longer is. I think it's far better to have, you know, whether it's trades or this kind of thing, especially given the technology and all these things we're heading in the direction. I am I am not of a mind where I can sit and recommend universities anymore, because
Mhm.
I don't see any university out there that actually enhances a student's critical thinking. I actually see that they're brainwashing instead. I don't see universities that challenge students how to think and make them more rational or more critical or more being able to assess. So I would say to a certain degree, yes. Like obviously, you don't want to do nothing with kids because we're not
Yeah.
savages. When you need the basics. And for higher education, I would say, given what we're at, the level we're at now, you're probably far better off, with something more practical, right? We Society is unfortunately leaving all of those office level things to AI,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Like even in like, how many times have you heard people in office go through documents like, oh, I had ChatGPT read this for me and summarize it.
Yeah.
So
No,
if that's the
it's
case,
existing.
it's
It is
starting,
very much
right?
the situation
So if
now
that's the
where,
case, in 10 years,
yeah,
why do I need a lawyer?
yeah,
Why do I need a lawyer? I
yeah,
get a document from somebody that says, Chat GPT, can you read this for me and summarize it? Uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. Okay, I go to court.
yeah. So, no, absolutely. So, either way, that's our take today. I guess tune in next time, Charles,
Martin.
and we will See you in our next episode.
Same Fat Man channel, same Fat Man time. What is it? Same bad channel, same bad time.
Hey, can't use that. It's copyright.
Fat Man? Oh wait, I think no. Fat Man is copyrighted by
I don't know.
by what's his name?
I don't know.
Oh god, you know him. Oh, he made several. What is it?
The singer?
No, he's also got a beard. He was something. The video. He was Fat Man and Chronic and that's a comic book. They did a black and white movie. They were selling like drugs outside of the movie. He did several movies. There was that one movie where one of the guys, he fell for a gay girl. Jeez, I can't.
You're
Chasing Amy. Chasing Amy. Who did Chasing Amy?
Kevin
Smith. Yes, Kevin Smith. He's probably got that copyrighted. Sorry, Kevin. Yes. If you ever find this, we apologize. We only used it because I'm a fat man, and you don't have the rights for a fat man. I'm hoping.
All right.
Anyways, all right. So that's it. We'll see you guys in the next episode.